What's good, everybody? It's your boy Brandon Scott again with my guy, the real Ed Oliver. Today we have special guest Will Clayton. We're gonna talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly about the Washington Wizards next on Locked On Wizards.
You are Locked On Wizards, your daily Washington Wizards podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's good, everybody? It's your boy Brandon Scott again from Locked On Wizards with my guy, the real Ed Oliver, and special guest Will Clayton. Thank you for making Locked On Wizards your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. So again, what's going on, Will? How you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me on. I'm stoked to be on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we're gonna dive right into it, man. First question today I got for you. We're gonna do a little bit of Wizards Matrix, man. Blue pill, red pill. All right. So the blue pill is standing pat, right? Rolling with the solid three. You know, they re-sign. You got Gafford on an extension, and we try to add a point guard and or a wing. Or you take the red pill, and it's a total rebuild from GM on down. Which pill you taking tonight?
Oh, that's the red pill. I mean, I think anybody who follows me knows it's the red pill. I just think if you're going the blue pill route, where we know where that's going, whereas the red pill, the key thing that you said on that was the GM part. Now, if I can take that red pill and there's a new GM and we can rebuild and kind of start fresh, 100%, that's where I'm at. I don't, I know they're going to see this through with the core, but we'll see where it goes. But give me that red pill. Give me 20 red pills. Give me 50 red pills.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I think that if they make the decision to rebuild, it has to be a total rebuild, man. Because if you look at the GM position, his scouting hasn't been the best. The scouting department, they're not hitting all their picks. Now, if you look at the picks, they're solid role guys and they have potential. Deni has a lot of potential. He's a 3-point or let's say a consistent 3-point shot away from being a really good player. Johnny Davis is starting to show a lot of potential. Corey Kispert, with his ability to shoot and cut to the basket and his IQ, and I guess you can add Rui, even though he's now a Laker, but he hasn't exactly hit guys who can come in and be starters and be really high ceiling guys right away. So yeah, and looking at coaching, we're gonna talk about that in a little bit, but I think that if this team rebuilds or decides to hit the rebuild button, it's got to be a total rebuild. They got to just go ahead and scrap the whole program, man, and really start from scratch. So that would be my opinion. I'll be taking the red pill with you, man. So I'm with you.
Yeah, I would take the red pill too. I think we've seen this run its course with Brad as the number one guy, and I'm a big Bradley Beal fan of when he's developed from, a guy who could barely dribble, and now he's got a bag. Now, he's not just a 3-point shooter. He could do more things, but at the same time, we know with him as the leader of the team, as the number one option, you're just not going to make the playoffs. I mean, the peak of him being the number one guy was the Russell Westbrook year where we barely made the playoffs. We had to be in the play-in. It's time to start fresh. And now Bradley Beal's out against the Spurs tomorrow night. Kyle Kuzma's out. So I think they're finally realizing that the season's over. They're finally doing a soft tank. They're trying to get the best draft position that they can get, which is finally the right decision that they're making. So they actually made a right decision there. But with Porzingis and Kuz and Brad, the solid three, and Kuz came out and said it himself that they're really not a big three. None of them are all-stars. And, the whole thing about Brad and the clutch, I think those comments, I think the season was over once he made those comments. It just looked like the body language has been off. And, the fact that they just been promoting this big three and that they don't even make the plan. It's just really, really disappointing. So I think there's no other way. But, I mean, of course, this team, like you said, Will, like you said, Brandon, they're going to try to see it through. And there's no choice. But if Kuz leaves this offseason and Porzingis leaves this offseason, then that definitely will be the worst-case scenario for this team and this franchise.
Or the best, because, I mean, I feel like that forces their hand, if anything. Like, if you're Brad and Kuz and KP opt out, are you going to request for a trade? Like, I would, but I don't know.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah,
like,
but
oh, go ahead, Brandon.
oh no, go ahead, man. I mean, I was gonna throw in it real quick. I think the thing with the Bradley Beal situation is the deed is already done, man. Because if you look at his contract, he gets paid more every year, and he's not getting younger. And his skill set, while he's still that scorer, his 3-point shot just ain't there anymore. He's more of a mid range guy. And if you add in the trade kicker and a no trade clause, I mean, really, try to look through the eyes of 29 other GMs. Would you trade for a guy going into his 30s who his skill set is diminishing to where, I mean, it's going to be a tough trade, man. I mean, you could say that it's untradeable. We call the John Wall trade untradeable. We call the Westbrook trade untradeable. And Tommy was able to move them, but this is a whole new animal, man. If you look at the list of players in this league who've had no trade clauses, Stephen Curry ain't got a no trade clause. So I'm just saying. So
Yeah, and the whole thing, if they leave for nothing, of course you would want, because you could have traded Kuz at the deadline. So that would be the worst aspect about it. Of course, he came out and said that he wants to live in a place where it's near Los Angeles and like near overseas at the same time, something like that. So, and then Chase Hughes reportedly said that Kuz could possibly get $30 million. So if you're gonna have to pay him that, and then Porzingis, his options around 30, above 30 million. You got Brad at 50 mil. So it's just it's an interesting situation to pay those three guys that much money, and you didn't even make the plan last year. So it's just the Wizards are in one of the worst situations in the NBA right now.
yes, sir. So before we move on, man, to our next question, tonight's episode is brought to you by Nissan Aria. And if I'm going to compare the Nissan Aria to a player, I guess I'm going to compare it to Kristaps Porzingis. They're both electric, brilliantly fierce, fiercely elegant, stunningly powerful, elegantly powerful. Delivers on duality, a combination of fierceness and elegance. Beautiful but strong. Good guy. The perfect SUV crossover. The 2023 Nissan Aria packs pin you to your seat power and premium intelligence, all in one electric vehicle. The all-new, all-electric 2023 Nissan Aria, the electric vehicle for people who love to drive. Shop now at nissanusa.com. So, next up,
Yes, sir. So Spencer Diniwiddie came up with some comments the other day. I was not the biggest fan of Spencer Dinwiddie's time here in DC, as a lot of Wizards fans were, but it was interesting what he said, and he did echo things that us as a fan base say, like, what's the direction of this team? There's no direction. So there was some truth to that. So I'll read the quote out, and I just want to get your thoughts on it, Will, and Brandon as well. Quote, he said, the team was trying to figure out an identity, right? Going in several different directions. He said of the Wizards organization at the time, quote, we had Rui coming back from what he was struggling with, the personal reasons. And then Deni was supposed to be like the second coming of Luka Doncic. You got Bradley Beal, who's obviously the max guy. You got the Lakers guys coming over who want to establish themselves independently of LeBron James. It was a situation where I was just saying, like, what are we doing? Question mark, end quote. So I just want to get your thoughts on that. He brought up Denny's name in there. He name dropped a couple guys, which he has. This is like the 30th, 100th time that Dinwiddie has talked bad about the Wizards organization, which they just left on bad terms. I just want to get your thoughts on it. Do you think it was necessary for him to throw Denny's name in there like that and Rui's name in there, and just the whole thoughts about the organization as well?
So, I mean, because there's multiple parts to this. I'll start with, I know it feels like Spencer's saying this, like, constantly bringing it up. I know people are asking him, but he does have a lot to say about it whenever he asks. And whenever he does talk about it, he does mention a lot of different things and a lot of different names. He does not mention himself. He does not talk about his role in the situation. Like, in that conversation he had with Taylor Ricks, he was saying, like, he was just like, I was just asking, what's my role? What's my role? And then in the same breath, he says, I came in thinking I was second to Brad. Like, I'm the number two. I know. So what your role is. What are you talking about? What's people's role? Like, to me, it sounds like my reading of the situation is, he came in there, and I think he thinks he's the de facto number two. And maybe he was told that, by Tommy, like that's what he was sold or whatever. Like, and if that's the plan, because that made sense going into the season with how the roster was structured, that Dinwiddie's the number two. I think he may have tried to do a little bit of stepping up in leadership, and it rubbed people the wrong way. And I mean, given how he was playing, like he shot 36% from the field, during his 2 months here. And I mean, he had some, flashes or good games or whatever. And I understand he was playing injured, but he had that contract that kind of incentivized him to play injured. And those are all things that he does not mention when he talks about the Wizards struggling. So the second part of it, the Wizards having no plan, that's 100% true. I mean, every single Wizards fan that's been watching this team for the last few years couldn't cop to saying that, like, they have no idea what they're doing. I mean, they're literally, they went all in on this big three for this season. I mean, they're on track to have a worse record than what they had last season. Like, and that's with Brad being out for the entire second half of the year. I know we got Kristaps halfway through, but like we also started on that 10-3 run. Like there's so many just like, it's exactly right. Nobody knows what the Wizards are doing. So I mean, he's right in that regard. But the whole like, him being kind of nebulous and squirrely about what really went down in Washington. I don't buy all of that. As far as that, like the Deni stuff, like second coming to Luka, that's such a fucking bullshit. I'm so sorry. That's such a bad thing to say because it was even in Deni's second season, we knew at that point that he was not Luka. Like it was very clear from the first season. And even though Scott Brooks was parking him in the corner and they're playing him and then as this 3-and-D role, he wasn't. I mean, Luka came in and he's rookie of the year and just doing triple doubles. Deni's not doing that. I mean, Deni had good defense and he had struggles shooting. Like that was his rookie year. It was just a learning curve. So back to Spence's whole point. Yeah, like the Wizards are dysfunctional, but Spence is not telling the whole story there. I think because I don't think Kuzma, Brad, all of those guys have that kind of negative reaction to him whenever he's in town. Like those dudes are pretty cold to him. And I don't think it's something as simple as questioning what your role is.
Yeah, it's crazy that he got a tribute video as well. But I mean, yeah, for him to throw Deni in there and say he's the second coming of Luka, I don't know if Tommy Shepard came out there and said that, but yeah, like you said, I mean, there's no accountability from Spencer Diniwiddie. He didn't talk about how he used to throw grenades at the end of the shot clock or how he could barely move or he was a cone on defense. He would let guys go by him or he would throw up floaters from the free throw line and they would miss off the side of the backboard. So no accountability from him at all. Yeah, and like I said, I do agree with him. I mean, there's no way you could disagree with him about the position or the directionless franchise that we have. The direction, the plan is to make the play-in or, get 2 home playoff games or get that 8th seed and lose in the first round to the Bucks or get gentlemen swept by the Sixers, like we did 2 years ago. So that's really the direction. Rui was out, so there's truth to that. There was just a lot of guys fighting for minutes, egos, Montrezl Harrell. It was a rough show. And then you have a first-year head coach who struggled to manage egos and guys bickering. Bertans on a big contract as well. He wasn't playing well. So yeah, the 10-3 start was good, but it was a disaster. It was a lot of the guys who were really at the same skill set, just fighting to be the man. And Montrezl Harrell had that MVP start. He thought he was the man at one point too. So yeah, it was rough. But Dinwiddie, he's just every interview he has no accountability. He never talks about himself at all and how he played.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I don't buy this whole he came in here blind. Nah, come on, man. You knew what you're coming in to do, man. Come on. And then, I mean, I guess there's several different factors in this whole mess, right? Number one, going back into this organization not knowing what they want to do. Well, that's been since the beginning. Coming out of the John Wall era. Talianis had no idea. He wasn't very transparent with what he was trying to do. He didn't really go out and get these top people in the industry to help retool or rebuild his team. He went in and he took the assistant to Ernie Grunfeld and said, here, like he's going to do anything different. Like this guy worked under Grunfeld for how long? He was his disciple. So why would you come into that situation and think that he's going to miraculously become like, no, they have no identity. They looked at it from, we got rid of John Wall. We're trying to boost Bradley Beal to be this guy, even though we're all screaming to him. He's not that guy. He is not that guy that you pay a supermax to and put the team on the shoulders. Me and E were talking about this last video, the last game, man, where if you look at a lot of these top players in the Eastern Conference, These players have the ability to put the team on their shoulders and win games, whether it's Embiid, whether it's Giannis, whether it's Tatum. But looking at Bradley Beal, you can't give him the ball and say, look, the fourth quarter is yours. Get us a win. No, because he's not that tier of a player. So this was doomed to fail from the beginning at the end of the John Wall era, man, because there was no clear direction from the beginning. Just Bertans. You re-signed this guy, and then it's a mess, man. So look at that Spencer Diniwiddie. He knew what he was getting into. You don't sign no daggone contract if you don't know what you're doing. He knew what he's doing. He did try to have a leadership role, but this team is Bradley Beal. It's Bradley Beal's team. And there was a lot of friction. There's been a lot of friction with guys because he's that guy and he wants to be the only voice. But then the kicker to this, he's not enough of a voice to really ebb and influence anybody. So, it's just because if you look at it, Spencer Dinwiddie had the issue. Montrezl Harrell had an issue. Now, Kyle Kuzma, look, he inadvertently he's taking shots. And he's kind of telling people where his mind is at, because why would I sign a $30 million a year contract to be a quiet voice in the corner? Nah, with that money comes expectations, just like Bradley Beal's contract. And I know there's a small piece of this fan base where they're really heavy on Beal. And my thing is this. I like Bradley Beal. I like his skill set, but the criticism comes not because of you. It comes because of the contract. When you sign that contract, there are certain expectations that comes from that contract. You need to be the guy that shoots the last shot. You need to be the leader. You need to be the guy that's digging into people. Between him and Wes, we're going to talk about Wes in a bit. There's no leadership. There's no clear vision. It's madness. What is the, insanity? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing repeatedly and expecting different results. And they continue to do the same thing every year and expect different results. So, that's why my take on it is, man.
No, 100%. I mean, you hit the nail on the head on everything. I mean, I think we all have good perspectives on it. I really hope Dinwiddie doesn't speak on the Wizards again. It really makes me upset when he talks about.
I'm ready to move on from that. Like, if he just wants to stop, if everyone just wants to stop talking about the Dinwiddie era in Washington, that would be for the better.
Right. Well, we're gonna get to Wes here, but we got a quick word from Ibotta. Groceries, school shopping, and getting a little something for yourself. You're already doing it, so why not get cash back for it with Ibotta? You can earn cash back on every shopping trip. Ibotta gives you cash back on hundreds of grocery items, from produce to personal care to pantry goods. Either link your loyalty account or upload your receipt after you shop and get your cash back. It's that easy. A typical basket of groceries was over $50 more expensive at the end of 2022 than the beginning of the year due to inflation. You can earn 2.5 times that in cash back from Ibotta, or even more depending on how much you use Ibotta. You can earn cash back on hundreds of online brands and retailers too when you start with Ibotta, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKED when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and use code LOCKED. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKED. All right, Brandon, you got a question about Wes Unseld Jr.
Yes, I do. But real quick, man, Ibotta, man, that's tough looking at the word, man. It's kind of like a quinoa. I mean, anybody look at quinoa and say, man, that's quinoa? Like,
Quino.
Yeah, man. It's like, I went to the store. I said, where's the quinoa? They said quinoa. I was like, come on, man. All right, get into Wes, man. My question for you is this. Is the second season, do you feel like the sample size is big enough to really evaluate the head coaching position and maybe send him on his way next season?
So typically I wouldn't think, it's enough of a set. Well, actually, that's not true. I think 2 seasons is plenty of a sample size. I think the problem is he was dealt kind of a crap hand with the roster he was given. But that's, I can't really use that as an excuse, especially when you have multiple 17, 19, 20-point leads that you're giving up. Like, I mean, his biggest issue to me is game feel and adjustments. Like, the number of times I've seen someone, a team that we're playing come out in the second half and just absolutely blow the doors off us because they figured out how to exploit our defense or lack thereof, that, it's too many to count this season. And I mean, I think we could have a better roster. We've struggled with some injuries to key players at certain times, but like that doesn't explain dropping games to the, when we're fully healthy, to the Hornets. Like, that doesn't explain, like I said, all those comebacks earlier. So there's so many times where I've seen him, we're squandering one of those leads in the middle of it, and we're at this 14, like, I can't remember who it was, but he'll let up 12, 14 straight points before he calls a timeout. And it's just like, dog, what are you doing? Like, and the fact that, when I'm on Twitter, I see everybody on Wizards Twitter just kind of lighten up, like, Wes, what are you doing? Wes, where's the timeout? Wes, like, if the fans can see that, like, how is the coach not seeing that? So, I mean, there's some merit to people who have said that, like, get him a veteran assistant coach. And, I think that would help, but I think the real answer is that I don't think Wes is a head coach caliber type of coach. I think he's better suited as an assistant. You bring him in, and his whole calling card was as a defensive minded, coach. And where is that? I said on Matt's pod that, I'll see it on an individual level, but I don't see any sort of concerted effort or scheming to make it happen. It's really just players who have, good instincts, or they make a good play, whether it's Gaff or KP being good rim protectors, DeLon just going superhuman on the perimeter and passing lanes, Deni being able to be patient and hold his own on some wings. That's more so where I see it than just like an overall scheme where we have everybody working together. And then in terms of his, offensive play or offensive coach, like I don't know where that is. I think most of that comes from, we just have talented offensive players and we get mismatches. Like Beal's a bucket, KP can get a mismatch, and Kuz, now that he's getting more, they all average 20 points this season. So, I mean, they can all score. People are going to bicker about the efficiency of Kuz or whatever, or, KP's ineffectiveness in the fourth quarter. But, that a lot of that ties back into, like, can Wes get ways to get open looks for people? And, I think 2 seasons is enough for me personally. And, I think Tommy needs to go before Wes needs to go. I think that's the way, because you can't let Tommy hire another coach. But, it's just tough. I think it was Matt Moderna who posited that, like, we could use, Wes as a bridge coach while they rebuild. Maybe that was Oz, but, like, once Tommy's gone or they do a rebuild, because Wes has like a 4-year contract, so he's in year 2 of that. And I don't think Ted's the kind of guy that's going to be paying 2 people that he may let go, whether someone gets canned. Because I think at the end of the season, someone's going to, like, the finger's got to be pointed at somebody, and I don't know where that fallout goes, but yeah, I'm unfortunately out on Wes and I really wanted to be in on him, but I just haven't seen it.
Yeah, but I think that the whole Wes Unseld signing was part of the confusion. First of all, it's confusing in so many ways. All right, Bradley Beal's your guy. You're letting him have input on free agency. Spencer Diniwiddie was a move that he wanted. He was a big catalyst in bringing Spencer Diniwiddie here. And, I mean, the relationship lasted to the trade deadline. So he, I believe he wanted Sam Cassell. He was very transparent in Sam Cassell being a candidate for head coaching. But, I think you're right. He came into a situation where you have veteran guys and you have young guys who are trying to develop. And that's a tough situation for a first-time head coach. But saying that, his lack of adjustments have to be the most frustrating thing about watching him coach. Even if he has a good first half, he stands pat. He doesn't make adjustments. He's not a fluid coach where he kind of makes moves on the go. He'll stick with a lineup and he's with it. That's it. This tall lineup, while I am a fan, and both me and E were both catalysts for them going bigger, and it works. But you have to be able to look at a roster and make adjustments here and there. Like, going against Cavaliers with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, yeah, I'm going big. But, you can't roll a big lineup against every single team in this league. You have to be able to kind of mix and match here and there. And with his roster, he has that. Deni can play 2 positions. Most of the guys on this team can play more than 1 position. So you have that ability to kind of mix and match against, kind of, and it comes with scouting, and Kyle Kuzma, again, said that. They're not really looking at their opponents. And I don't understand that. You don't know who you're playing? You've had how many shooters come in DC and shoot us out the building? It's just the scouting, the fact that they're not studying their opponents, not watching tape, it screams that it's time for them to go. He's not ready to be a head coach. He's an assistant coach, and that's cool. We know that now, but I think that depending on where we're going with this team, but they have to bring in a veteran guy who's going to hold people accountable. There's no voice right now. Wes sits over there and he's stoic, not saying anything. Bradley Beal's high on 5, and depending on who we're playing. If it's Boston, he's definitely high-fiving people. And then, it's just there's no accountability, there's no leadership. Kyle Kuzma came in and he did show leadership, but since he made those comments, you have not seen much leadership out of Kyle Kuzma. You've seen body language and screams, man, look, these 9 games need to go because I'm ready to go on vacation. So, looking at Wes, I think the best course of action would be to fire him. And I'm with you. I don't see Ted firing both of them. So it's going to have to be one or the other. If they get rid of Wes, unfortunately, we're going to go into a really deep draft with Tommy Shepard at the helm. And, so there's a lot of decisions need to be made, man. So what do you think, E?
Definitely, yeah. It was definitely, you could say a nepotism hire. His dad, of course, the winning the only Wizards champion or the Bullets championship. His dad, yeah. Shout out to the hat there from Will. Bullets hat, legendary hat.
Nice.
So I mean, they honoring his dad's legacy. I do think they should have got a coach with experience, especially with the veterans that they had. So many veterans on the team, so many egos. But Wes has just been on the wrong side of history too much. We lead the league in giving up 15-plus point leads. The 35-point lead given up to the Clippers last year. Giving up 100 points in the paint to the Nuggets, losing to the Nets at home by 41. There's just so many. The Cam Thomas game where he had 40, where he gave up 40 points. I mean, Cam Thomas had a couple 40-point games, but we gave up that lead. Kuzma said that we don't know our personnel, letting Michael Porter Jr. hit 6 threes, letting the Kings, 3 guys hit 5 threes on us, not knowing our personnel, leaving shooters wide open. So yeah, there's just a lot of numbers that you look at West, and then honestly, he really hasn't. The defense rating numbers haven't really improved since Scott Brooks. And Scott Brooks, we bashed him for being such a terrible defensive coach, and you just haven't seen it get much better. So I just haven't seen much improvement from West with this team. So if they do move on from West, I don't mind it at all. If it was a rebuilding situation, then sure, I think West would have been in a better situation that way to start off. So yeah, his tenure here, and then Tommy Shepard. He needs to be evaluated, just the whole front office. And, of course, we got to point to Ted Leonsis because he's the leader of the ship and just the way the organization's ran, so we can't let him off the hook. So that's my take on it if they do move on from West. But I got a question for you, Will. It's kind of a loaded question. Got to talk about Deni, of course. So what percentage do you see him being on this roster past the trade deadline next season? Because – you see all our first-round picks, basically, you can just say they're going to get traded. Rui getting traded, Kelly Oubre getting traded, Troy Brown Jr. getting traded. So the list goes on and on and on. Of course, only Otto Porter got a second contract. Bradley Beal got a second contract. Those are the guys since, 2012 have gotten second contract. So what's your take on that? And then what do you think is the best-case scenario for him this offseason to improve his game?
First, make it past the trade deadline. He's got to make it through the offseason because I've already seen people pitching Deni trades to Indiana. And I get it. Like, I totally get it because if we're going to build around the big three, reset the contract cycle, get another rookie. And people are wanting production on offense out of a forward spot. And we need scoring from the bench. Like I completely understand, all the arguments for it. I'm obviously a little biased because he's my guy, but I do think there's a really good player in there. His highest ceiling is kind of like, a very high end, I'm hard, it's hard to say the word elite role player, but I think he could be that caliber of player just because I think what he provides on the defensive end, if you look at a lot of the advanced metrics, he's for his age, he's already a very, very good defender. If he can stop complaining to the refs and get some of them on his side, maybe they'll call a little less fouls over time. If he can work on getting his finishing and his shooting, just tighten up a little bit. And I'm talking like marginal percentages because right now he's averaging like 8 points a game, 8.6 or something. And that's a slight improvement from last year. And if he can just tick those up a bit and become like an 11, 12, 13 point per game player, he's a really good rebounder. You know, I don't know if that's a function of, you know, KP's not, so there's boards to get. But, you know, I think he works hard on the boards. He's great in transition. So, you know, I like a lot of what he offers. And I think his abilities are negated because we play in the half court a lot. And when he was playing with Kuz and Brad and KP, he's not really going to be getting, you know, top looks on offense. But you see these last couple games where Kuzma's out and he's getting a little bit of a bigger role and kind of gets to play within himself and, you know, play a little freer. And I mean, and that's kind of the player I was expecting we were going to get. But I don't think it's not that he doesn't get the opportunity. It's just he doesn't always play like that. And it's some of it's the matchup, you know, contingent. Some of it's, you know, I think he's in his own head a little bit, but in terms of whether he's here past that trade deadline or not, I hope so. You know, I would love to keep the kid, but you know, it's going to be hard for them to justify keeping him unless they can do a wink deal on some kind of extension. They may let him hit restricted free agency and match if he's not going to be getting a big deal. You know, it really depends on what he comes out doing next season. Because if he goes through the offseason and he comes out having one of those Rui-like blossoms where, you know, it seemed like, oh, he's going to be hitting everything. You know, I know Rui went, you know, MIA for a little bit, but like when he came back, he was draining threes. You know, he looked like kind of like a different dude. If he can have that kind of fourth year jump, or if he can find a way to just own in on what he's doing in the times where he's doing turbo mode, and bring that consistently every single night, you know, you make it hard to decide what to do with him, because like I think you can extend him reasonably on a good contract because he hasn't blown up yet. So I mean, there's a way to lock in a player that's about to blossom on a decent deal, but you know, that's also a big risk because you don't want to lock in a long-term player that, you know, can't finish. And I love my guy, but you got to finish, Deni. You got to finish those. But yeah, that's kind of where I see that headed. It's really up in the air, but I'm always going to be in his corner. And I think he's going to have a long career just because he's a good defender. He's 6'9" with a quick first step. He can handle the ball. He can run. You put him on someone like the Warriors or the Spurs, and he's going to be a big part of that rotation, I think.
Yeah, I think he definitely has potential for sure. Just has to improve from the three-point line, shooting 29% from the three, 43% from the field. The game, I know the narrative is that he doesn't play well against playoff teams, but he did play pretty well against the Nuggets, and that he only plays well against lottery teams like the Rockets, but he had a good game the other night with 16 points. Nice fadeaway and, you know, nice in and out against Aaron Gordon, who's a solid defender as well. So, you know, you see the flashes, you just have to see consistency. Dribble the ball with his left hand, like you said, not complaining to the refs, knocking down a three, mid-range game. He's a good rebounder, solid defender, but there's just so many times where the confidence is so huge with him. If he starts the game off missing 2 or 3 shots, he'll put his head down, or gets called for a couple of fouls and put his head down. So that's body language and confidence is a huge, huge thing for him. As far as him being here after the trade deadline, personally, and it's not just him, it's just how the Wizards organization has been. They just have not been able to retain their first round picks. So I think it's more likely than not that he's going to be back, or more likely that he won't be here. But time will tell. We'll see. We'll see if he works out with Drew Hanlon again this offseason. We'll see if that works out. His offseason program, his offseason workouts. And yeah, I think everybody's on the table too for a trade. So he could be a guy that's just used in a trade if they can get a more talent. You know, just everything should be on the table this offseason. So if there's any way you can upgrade the roster, if you have to trade anybody, it could be, you know, DeLon Wright or anybody, who else, Monte Morris, Daniel Gafford, anybody should be on the table if the price is right to attain whatever, you know, potential all-star to bring in. So we'll see. I'm intrigued to see how his offseason goes and how this next season goes for Deni. He has a lot of stands that are in the chat every night that definitely say a lot of they have a lot of support for him.
I saw that episode 2 nights ago or whatever. That was fun.
Yeah, man. I mean, really, I think there's 3 main factors you got to kind of look at Deni with, man. Number one, you know, he puts a lot of pressure on himself. You know, when his confidence is a big thing. If you notice, when he's confident, man, he's a heck of a player. He can play some ball, but when he's not, you know, he really gets down on himself. The second thing I look at is, coming over from a league where, defensive wise, they're not really in your face. There's a lot more room given to shooters. And even when driving the lane, with a lot of people aren't checking them. So it's been really something he had to learn is kind of, driving lane and finishing through contact, stuff like that. And he's really getting better. And 3, man, there's not a lot of players from Israel playing in the NBA, and coming over and being that guy, representing a country, being that guy, there's a lot of pressure because you don't want to be that guy, man, that comes over from Israel and fails. And, there's a lot of pressure on the guy. And, a lot of fans, they do put pressure on him. And he had to tell some fans last time, like, look, let the guy be a kid. He's 20. I mean, he's a young guy. He's, let him find his way. Let him find his way. I think he'll be all right, man. Now, I do think he's best served on the team where they're going to let him develop. This team, it's just, we're not good at developing right now. And going to Indiana could be a good move. San Antonio will be lovely for him because he would have room to kind of blossom. His career would have been better, in my opinion, if he went to a team that is trying to develop young talent. Coming to a situation where you already got established veterans and, and the team doesn't have an identity, it's tough. It really is. So I think he has a lot of potential, and I think he's going to be a really, really good player in this league. So before we go, man, E, you got any more questions there?
No, that's it.
Cool, man. All right, Will, man, again, appreciate you tonight, man. Before we roll, you got anything you want to plug, man?
No, I mean, I'm just a dude with kids and a family and a Twitter account. So, if you guys ever want to follow me, I'm at Will C capital I Aiden. I have no affiliation with the CIA. It's just someone had my name, so I had to get creative and do a capital I. But I appreciate y'all for having me on, man. This was fun.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Anytime, man. Yes, sir. So thank you for making Locked On Wizards your first listen today. Now make your second listen Game to Game NBA every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NBA with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game Locked On NBA, available on Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. So again, I appreciate everybody. Appreciate you, Will. Appreciate you, E. And everybody, I hope everybody has a